Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question that may sound simple, but it's one that could change your life. What's the very first thing you do when you wake up? Is it reaching for your phone? Checking the news? Running through your to-do list? Or hitting the snooze button for the third time? What if I told you the way you spend the first 10 minutes of your day could determine the peace you feel, the clarity you carry, and the strength you stand on for the next 24 hours? In this fast-paced world full of distractions, many people try to control the chaos after it starts. But the real secret is learning how to meet peace before the noise begins. The next few minutes, I want to show you not just a habit, but a sacred rhythm. One that can reshape your inner world, elevate your mindset, and anchor you in a power greater than your own. Just stay with me, because what we're about to explore is not about religion. It's about real alignment. It's not about routine. It's about restoration. And by the time this message ends, you'll understand why the morning holds the key to your strongest, most grounded, most fulfilled self. How you begin your morning determines far more than you might think. It doesn't just set the tone for the first few hours. It can affect your emotions, your energy, your reactions, and even your outcomes for the entire day. The first thoughts you allow into your mind, the first emotions you nurture, the first words you speak, and the first moments you spend. These are like seeds. They get planted deep in the soil of your spirit, and they grow quietly, influencing everything that comes after. This is why the chosen ones, those walking a path of divine purpose, cannot afford to start their day in randomness or chaos. They understand the power of intentional mornings. They recognize that if you let the world set your tone, the world will control your peace. But if you begin your day with alignment, with clarity, and with the presence of God, everything that follows is shaped by that foundation. In the early hours of the day, before the noise begins, before the deadlines hit, before the distractions multiply, there is a sacred stillness, and within that stillness is an open invitation. It's not a shout, it's not a demand, it's a whisper, a gentle call to come closer, to connect, to realign with something eternal before stepping into the temporary. When you begin your morning by acknowledging the divine presence, by quieting your heart and listening beyond yourself, you shift the energy of your day. You're no longer reacting to the world. You're walking ahead of it with insight, peace, and authority. This is not about religious performance. It's not about checking off a spiritual box. It's about setting a spiritual atmosphere that influences your emotional atmosphere. Because the truth is, we all wake up with a battle already beginning. For some, it's anxiety. For others, it's the weight of yesterday, or the dread of yesterday, or the dread of what today might hold. There are days you wake up tired and your soul before your feet even touch the floor. This is why the way you start your morning matters more than anything else. Because when you open your eyes, you're not just waking up physically, you're waking up spiritually. And the first thing you reach for speaks of volumes. If you reach for noise, you'll carry noise. If you reach for pressure, you'll carry pressure. But if you reach for God, you'll carry peace. You'll carry wisdom. You'll carry strength that doesn't come from caffeine or motivation, but from a source that never runs dry. The chosen ones don't have the luxury of casual mornings. Their calling demands clarity. Their purpose requires spiritual strength. And that strength doesn't come from a flawless routine. It comes from an anchored spirit. You can have a packed schedule, but if your soul is grounded from the first light of day, nothing that comes against you can shake. You can face betrayal, confusion, or unexpected challenges. But when your morning starts with God, your reactions will come from your spirit, not your stress. And that makes all the difference. There's a quiet authority that comes when your day begins in the presence of the one who holds it. You don't need to prove yourself to everyone. You don't need to control every outcome. You just walk with assurance that you are being led. That assurance is what allows the chosen ones to stay focused when others panic. It's what gives them the patience to wait when others rush. It's what keeps them soft-hearted when the world goes cold. But that posture doesn't happen by accident. It is formed day by day, morning by morning, decision by decision. When you intentionally begin your day in the presence of God, you're not just changing your mood. You're inviting alignment. And alignment is what gives access to power. The chosen ones have learned that the most powerful version of themselves is the one that knows how to be still before trying to be strong. It's the version that listens before speaking, that prays before reacting, that reflects before moving. That version is formed in the morning, before anyone else sees them, before the world calls on them, before the demands of their assignment consume them. In that hidden place, they are filled, renewed, and reminded of who they are and why they're here. And it's not always easy. Some mornings feel heavy. Some mornings feel empty. But even in those moments, when the chosen ones choose to show up, to open their heart, to be honest, to just sit in the presence of the divine, something begins to shift. Because God honors consistency, and He doesn't need long speeches. He just needs a willing heart, the heart that says, before I check my messages, before I carry the weight of the world, let me carry your peace. Before I speak to others, let me hear from you. That kind of morning is not just a routine. It's warfare. It's preparation. It's alignment. And when you start your day that way, you start strong, no matter how weak you may feel. The tone you set in those early moments will carry you when the day tests you. It will remind you of who you are when others try to define you. It will give you stability when everything else is shifting. That's why the chosen ones prioritize their mornings. Not because it's convenient, but because they've learned that if they win the morning, they've already won half the battle of the day. So ask yourself, not with guilt, but with intention, what tone are you setting when you wake up? Who or what is shaping your thoughts in those first quiet minutes? Because if you truly want to walk in the strength of your purpose, you must first stand in the strength of your presence. And presence is built, moment by moment, prayer by prayer, morning by morning. In a world that never sleeps, where alerts, deadlines, and voices compete for our attention, starting the day with spiritual alignment is more than just a good habit. It's a necessary defense. Before the day begins to unfold, with its pressures and decisions, there's a sacred window, a space where we decide whether we will operate from peace or be pulled by panic. For the chosen ones, those called to carry out purpose beyond themselves, this is not just a spiritual luxury. It's a lifeline. Every morning we wake up into a battlefield, whether we realize it or not. The moment we open our eyes, we are confronted by thoughts Some are anxious, some are demanding, some are self-critical. Without spiritual grounding, we are vulnerable to letting those voices dominate our inner world. But when the chosen ones begin their day in the presence of God, they silence every other voice. They recalibrate. They don't enter the day reacting to the world. They approach the day leading it with their spirit in control and their mind at peace. Spiritual alignment is not just about praying for 5 minutes. It's about being anchored before the storm comes. It's about being internally centered before the noise outside has a chance to distract. When you begin your morning by connecting with something eternal, you are lifted above the temporary. Suddenly, what seemed urgent loses its grip, and what truly matters becomes clear. This is the clarity the chosen ones depend on, not the kind that comes from productivity books or motivational quotes, but from divine stillness, where guidance is whispered and direction becomes personal. The chosen ones often live lives of great responsibility. People look to them, depend on them, and sometimes even demand from them. But no one sees the spiritual battles they fight in silence. That's why they must guard their mornings. Because the moment the world begins to pull at them, they need to already be rooted in truth, in purpose, and in peace. And that rooting doesn't happen in the middle of the chaos. It happens in the quiet before it. Alignment before action is what makes their actions effective. Clarity before conversation is what gives their words power. Peace before pressure is what allows them to walk through fires without burning out. We often underestimate how deeply our days are shaped by the first atmosphere we expose ourselves to. If you begin with social media, your mind fills with comparison. If you start with the news, your heart fills with worry. If you begin with emails, your soul fills with urgency. But if you begin with God, your spirit fills with peace. And that peace is not fragile, it's strong. It stays with you because it was planted deep before the first voice of the world ever reached you. Many people try to fix their day after it has gone wrong, but the chosen ones have learned the best time to fight a storm is before it starts. The best time to choose peace is before fear has a voice. And the best time to hear God is before everything else tries to speak. This is why they protect their mornings, not because it's trendy, but because it's transformation. Because in those first moments of the day, you decide what spirit will rule you, chaos or calm, destruction or discernment, flesh or faith. Spiritual alignment also means surrender. It means waking up and saying, "Not my will today, yours." It means recognizing that no matter how many plans you have, if God isn't leading them, they can't produce real fruit. The chosen ones walk in alignment, not to impress anyone, but because they know their strength has a source, and that source must be acknowledged, invited, and honored before the day begins. That surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's what allows them to face pressure without being crushed, to make decisions without being double-minded, and to carry burdens without collapsing. In that sacred morning space, direction becomes clear. Decisions that felt overwhelming begin to settle into peace. Worries that once screamed now fade into silence. This doesn't mean problems disappear. It means the chosen ones are no longer enslaved to them. They don't walk into the day reacting. They walk in with resolve, because their spirit has been fed before anything else. Their soul has been heard before any demand was placed on them. Their mind has been washed with truth before any lie could land. Spiritual alignment also fuels discernment. When your day begins in communion with God, you're not just reacting with logic, you're walking with wisdom. The chosen ones make decisions others may not understand. They say no when others say yes. They slow down when others are rushing. And that guidance doesn't come from popular opinion. It comes from divine whisperings heard in the quiet of morning. This is why the chosen ones are often misunderstood, because they walk to a rhythm that isn't seen but is deeply known. When the chosen ones start their day aligned, the enemy loses his grip before he even speaks. Worry has no access, fear has no room, because the throne of the heart is already occupied. There's no vacancy for lies when truth has already moved in. That's what morning alignment does. It fills you before the world can empty you. It strengthens you before the world tests you. And it reminds you that you are not moving alone. You are being guided, protected, and equipped from the inside out. So every morning is more than just a new start. It's a divine opportunity. A chance to choose alignment over anxiety, surrender over stress, and presence over pressure. For the chosen ones, that choice is everything. It's not optional. It's essential. Because they know the battles of the day are won or lost in the stillness before it begins. There is a kind of peace that this world cannot give you, and it certainly cannot take it away. It is not found in routines or productivity, not in comfort or success. It's the peace that surpasses all understanding. The peace that doesn't make sense in the natural because it isn't rooted in the natural. That kind of peace only comes from starting your morning connected to the source of all peace. And when the chosen ones begin their day with God, they're not just performing a ritual. They are entering into a divine exchange. They bring their confusion and receive clarity. They bring their anxiety and receive calm. They bring their weakness and receive strength. This kind of morning encounter doesn't just make the day feel better. It fundamentally changes how they move through it. The world is a loud place. It screams for your attention, demands your energy, and offers nothing in return but distraction and noise. Without the discipline of spiritual mornings, it's easy to get swept up in it all, racing through hours without once pausing to check if your soul is aligned. But the chosen ones live differently. They've tasted what it means to move in that inexplicable peace. They've learned that it is far better to start slow with God than to start fast without Him. The world rushes into its day blindly, but the chosen ones wait to be led. They don't want just a good day. They want a guided day. That is the secret to their peace. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of God in the midst of them. That's why the chosen ones prioritize those sacred morning moments, because they know that their circumstances may not change. But when they enter into that morning stillness, they are changed. And when you are changed, the world around you begins to shift. People may not understand it. They'll wonder how you remain calm when things fall apart. They'll question why you're not panicking when everyone else is. What they don't see is the early morning hours, when you traded your unrest for peace, your fear for faith, your burden for presence. This peace doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't always feel emotional or dramatic. Sometimes it comes like a soft breath, settling deep in your spirit. Other times it feels like a shield, unseen, but very real. It guards your mind from racing thoughts, protects your emotions from spiraling, gives you a steadiness that people can't explain. That's why it's called peace that surpasses understanding. It's not peace based on outcome. It's peace based on presence. And once you've encountered that kind of stillness, you become addicted to it. You crave it more than applause, more than recognition, more than even control. Because you've discovered that the greatest strength comes not from knowing everything, but from trusting the one who died. The chosen ones understand the difference between a peaceful moment and a peaceful mindset. Anyone can feel calm in a quiet room, but to carry that calm into a loud world, that's the fruit of spiritual discipline. That's what morning time with God produces. It cultivates a peace that follows you into difficult conversations, tense decisions, and overwhelming environments. You're no longer thrown off by everything because your spirit is grounded in something unshakable of your foundation before the winds came. There are people who carry an atmosphere. When they walk into a room, peace follows them. They don't speak loudly or demand attention. They simply exist with a kind of authority that can't be explained by title or position. More often than not, those are people who have met with God in the morning. Before the day began, they sat in stillness. They laid down their need to control and allowed God to center them. And now, without saying a word, they bring peace into chaos, clarity into confusion, and grace into tension. This is the quiet strength of those who start their day in the presence of God. For the chosen ones, peace is not a passive thing. It is intentional. It is fought for in the early hours when the bed is warm and the world is still asleep. It's not easy. Some mornings they don't feel anything. Some mornings the silence feels dry. But they show up anyway. They sit, they listen, they seek, because they know that even in the silence, something is being deposited into their spirit. That peace doesn't always come in lightning bolts. It often comes in layers, day by day, moment by moment, quiet, consistent, and powerful. And what's amazing is this: the more they practice this discipline, the less they are shaken by the unexpected. It's not that bad things stop happening. It's that their spirit is no longer dictated by circumstance. They walk through storms with stillness. They carry rest in the middle of unrest. And they can do that because they built their day on peace, not panic. This is the gift of starting mornings with God. Not just having a better day, but having a guarded mind, a calm heart, a resilient spirit. Peace becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a way of life. And that life, rooted in stillness, becomes a light to others. People are drawn to it. They don't know what it is, but they want it. They want the calm in your eyes, the strength in your silence, the rest in your presence. And when they ask you how you do it, your answer is simple. I started my day with peace the world can't give. That peace has a source, and it's available to anyone willing to seek it in the quiet moments of morning. When you are chosen, your life is not your own. There's a weight that rests on your spirit that doesn't match your age, your circumstances, or even your environment. It's a divine heaviness that sets you apart, not because you're better, but because you're assigned. And that assignment comes with a cost. One of the first things the chosen ones come to realize is this: the deeper your calling, the more sacred your separation must be. Before the world sees anything from you, God, will often take you through a season of being hidden. And in that hiddenness, there's a stripping away, not to punish you, but to prepare you. To prepare your heart, your mindset, your character, and your spirit for what your mouth will one day speak and your hands will one day carry. This separation is not always dramatic. It's not always a clean break. Sometimes it looks like friends drifting away. Sometimes it's opportunities drying up that once fed your ego. Sometimes it's you simply losing the desire to be where you used to find comfort. And you can't always explain it. You just know something is different. That's because before God calls the chosen ones into public purpose, He first calls them into private pruning. And in that place, you start to learn that not everyone can go with you. Not everyone is meant to walk the full length of your journey. Some people are assignments, some are seasons, few are lifetime companions. And the chosen ones learn to bless them as they go, not beg them to stay. God is a jealous God, not in the human sense, but in the holy sense. He desires all of you, not just pieces. So when He chooses someone, He begins to pull them away from anything that competes for their affection, anything that contaminates their clarity, and anything that distracts them from their mission. You start to notice that the more serious you get about your assignment, the more quiet your circle becomes, and the deeper you go into your purpose, the less company you seem to keep. It's not because you're unloved. It's because your calling requires focus. The noise must be reduced. The voices must be fewer. The distractions must be cut. Why? Because when your destiny is heavy, your margins must be guarded. Loneliness for the chosen ones is not a punishment. It is a sanctuary. It's where intimacy with God is developed. It's where the volume of the world fades and the whispers of heaven grow louder. In that place, your character is refined, your discernment sharpens, your obedience is tested, and as painful as it is, that separation creates a container strong enough to carry the weight of your calling. Because if you step into influence before you're anchored in identity, the applause will become your validation, and the crowd will become your compass. That's why the chosen ones are called to walk alone for a season. It's not rejection, it's redirection. God's way of saying, before I give you what you're called to carry, and yes, it can feel isolating, you'll watch others rise while you wait. You'll see connections forming around you that you aren't part of. You'll feel the sting of being misunderstood, overlooked, or even forgotten. But the chosen ones don't rush to be seen. They've learned that premature exposure can destroy what patience would have perfected. They trust that the same God who called them to the hidden place will also be the one to reveal them when the time is right. Until then, they stay in the process. They embrace the loneliness. They allow the separation to do its work. There's also a deepening that happens in that space. When you're alone, you start to see yourself more clearly. The masks come off. The performance dies. You're faced with your fears, your flaws, and your need for healing. And it is there that God begins the real work. Not on the surface, but at the root. He rebuilds what was broken. He restores what was lost. He redeems what was lost. And when He's done, what emerges is not just gifted, it's grounded. Not just called, but qualified through the fire. The chosen ones walk differently because they've been forged in silence. Their power is not in their charisma. It's in their consistency. Their strength isn't loud. It's solid. Because they've learned in that lonely place how to depend on God for everything. Approval, direction, timing, and identity. It all comes from him. And that dependency makes them dangerous to the enemy. Because a person who doesn't need the crowd can't be manipulated by it. If the person who's been shaped in the dark isn't shaken in the light. So when the chosen ones find themselves in a season of separation, they no longer ask, why me? Instead they ask, what are you doing in me? They know this isn't exile. It's preparation. They understand that the greater the assignment, the more intentional the isolation, and they stop resisting it because they've learned that being set apart is the only way to be fully set into purpose. What's born in solitude can't be destroyed in public. And that's why God hides his most powerful vessels until they're ready. He protects their development, guards their purity, and trains their spirit. And yes, it's lonely, but it's holy. And when you finally emerge, you don't come out needing validation. You come out carrying a presence that cannot be imitated. That's the reward of the chosen ones. They may be alone for a season, but when the season shifts, they step into a life that's not just full, it's fulfilled. Being chosen isn't glamorous. It sounds beautiful, but in reality, it often feels like being broken in silence while the world watches you from a distance, not knowing what you're going through. One of the heaviest truths the chosen ones come to understand is that elevation in the eyes of God doesn't come before a season of crushing. And that crushing isn't public. It's private. It's done in the hidden place, where no applause exists and no one sees the tear. There, in the quiet, when it's just you and God, the real transformation takes place. That's the place where the oil begins to flow. Oil in Scripture symbolizes anointing, presence, power, but oil doesn't flow without pressure. The olive must be crushed before it releases what's within, and so must you. The chosen ones walk a path that few would envy, because before their voice is trusted, their heart is tested. Before their influence is extended, their motives are examined. Before they carry the mantle, they must endure the weight. And it's in that painful process that they become not only useful, but usable. Because God isn't interested in talent without surrender or influence without integrity. He's looking for vessels that have been emptied of self so they can be filled with Him. The crushing season is not easy. It strips you of pride. It reveals attachments you didn't know you had. It surfaces wounds you thought you buried. And it brings you to your knees, not in defeat, but in complete dependence. The chosen ones don't rise because they pushed harder than everyone else. They rise because they surrendered deeper than most are willing to. And in that surrender, they are broken open, not destroyed, but refined, not diminished, but developed. And the oil that flows from that place, it's pure, it's sacred, it's undeniable. This is why the chosen ones don't take shortcuts. They've learned that what comes easy can't sustain what's heavy. The crown means nothing if the character beneath it can't carry it. So they submit to the process, even when it hurts, even when it's long, even when no one understands, because they know that the crushing is not punishment, it's preparation. It's God saying, there's more in you, but it must be released through pressure. When they finally emerge, they carry something different. Not just words, but weight. Not just charm, but change. Because the oil they carry didn't come cheap. It came through midnight prayers, silent battles, and faith stretched to the breaking point. And this place of crushing, the chosen ones also become deeply acquainted with the voice of God, not just his words, but his whispers. In the silence, they learn that presence is more important than platform, that obedience is more precious than opportunity, that the secret place is not a stepping stone to influence, it is the destination itself. And from that revelation, they begin to lead not from ambition, but from intimacy. They're not performing, they're pouring. What they give the world isn't crafted through strategy. It's birthed through surrender. And this is why the chosen ones seem different. People may not understand it, but they can feel it. There's an authenticity that can't be faked, a weight that can't be replicated. It's the fragrance of the oil. It clings to their presence. It changes atmospheres. It cuts through noise, not because they're trying to be powerful, but because they've been through the process that produced power. They've wrestled in private so they can walk in peace publicly. They've died to their ego so they can rise in grace. And every word they speak carries the echo of their journey, the pain, the perseverance, the presence of God that met them in their most broken moments. But even when the oil begins to flow, the crushing doesn't fully stop. The chosen ones live with a continual awareness that without him they are nothing. So they keep returning to the altar. They keep laying down their pride, their plans, their need for recognition. Because they know that staying anointed means staying submitted. And submission means accepting that the oil may cost you relationships, comfort, and the ability to live like everyone else. But it also means living with power that doesn't run dry, peace that doesn't collapse, purpose that doesn't get shaken when the applause fades. When people look at the chosen ones and wonder why they walk alone, why they move differently, why they carry a weight that others don't, they don't realize the cost. They don't see the crushing. They don't know the nights spent crying out, the prayers whispered in brokenness, the choices made in silence. But the chosen ones remember. They carry the memory of every breaking point, and they carry the oil as proof that God wastes nothing. Not a tear, not a test, not a single hidden moment. Every bit of the crushing was used to produce something eternal. So if you're in that season where you feel isolated, stretched, pressed, know this: it is not the end. It's the beginning of the oil. You're not being discarded, you're being distilled. You're not being buried, you're being planted. The pressure you feel is not a sign that God has forgotten you. It's evidence that he's forming you. And when it's time, when you've been fully broken open, you won't need to announce your arrival. The oil will speak for you. The chosen ones often find themselves in a paradox. They are called to serve people, yet they are set apart from them. They carry a message for the crowd, but can never fully blend into it. Their hearts are open, but their lives are guarded. It is a strange existence, one that seems to defy natural understanding. One of the hardest realities they must accept is this: the more they walk in their purpose, the more they will be misunderstood. The more they pursue the assignment, the more isolated their path becomes. And perhaps most painfully, the more they grow in their calling, the less they are truly known by others. It isn't that they don't want to be close to people. In fact, the chosen ones often love deeply. Their capacity for empathy, for discernment, for seeing the unseen, draws people in. But what people don't realize is that loving deeply comes with a cost. Because when you can see beneath the surface, you're not just aware of who people are. You're also aware of who they are not. And that kind of insight creates emotional distance. You begin to love without needing to possess. You begin to care without needing to be understood. It's a lonely kind of love, one that gives more than it receives, one that often gets mistaken for coldness, when in reality it is born from constant surrender. To be chosen is to be burdened with insight. You see what others overlook. You sense what others ignore. You discern intentions, spiritual climates, hidden struggles. And while that's a gift, it's also a heavy weight. Because how do you fully connect with people who aren't even aware of the depth you live in? How do you form mutual bonds when most of your energy is spent protecting your spirit from environments that don't nourish your calling? The chosen ones eventually come to understand it is better to have a few who truly know your heart than many who only admire the surface. It is better to be surrounded by silence than to fill your life with voices that can't feed your soul. Relationships become complex. Friendships that once felt easy now feel strained, not because of offense, but because of growth. Conversations start to feel shallow. You long for depth, for spiritual resonance, for someone to look at your life and see beyond your accomplishments into your battles. But that kind of connection is rare. And so the chosen ones learn to be content with solitude. Not out of pride, but out of protection. Their purpose is too precious to be polluted by casual access. Their peace is too hard-won to be disrupted by the wrong company. They walk alone, not because they're arrogant, but because their assignment demands clarity. And clarity requires space. And yet the chosen ones aren't bitter. They don't isolate out of fear or ego. They isolate out of obedience. They understand that the higher you go, the thinner the air, and the fewer the companions. Some people were only meant to walk with you through the valley, but they were never meant to climb the mountain with you. Others were only meant to observe your journey, not participate in it. And some God removes, not as a punishment, but as a form of divine protection. Because when your calling is great, the distractions can't be small. The enemy doesn't attack your past. He attacks your potential. And one of his favorite tools is relationships that dilute your direction. Do the chosen ones grow more selective, not judgmental, but discerning? They don't chase connection. They wait for alignment. They don't beg for love. They trust God to send what is rooted in Him. They don't explain their isolation. They embrace it as part of the preparation, because they know that being misunderstood is often the price for carrying revelation, that being alone is often the classroom where wisdom is taught, that being unseen is often where true strength is built. And in the quiet, in the space where few dare to dwell, they are transformed. They learn to draw from wells the world cannot see. They find friendship in the Spirit. They find joy in obedience. They find strength not in numbers but in nearness to God. And as they mature, they stop craving the things they once did. They no longer need validation to feel valuable. They no longer need company to feel complete. They're whole, not because they have everything, but because they have let go of everything that was never meant to stay. This is the paradox of the chosen. They are alone, but not lonely. They are quiet, but not empty. They are hidden, but not forgotten. And while the world may never fully understand them, heaven does. God sees the cost. He honors the sacrifice. He fills the space left behind by lost relationships with His presence. And in that presence, there is fullness. fullness of joy, fullness of strength, fullness of identity. So if you find yourself in that place, misunderstood, overlooked, surrounded by people but feeling unseen, know that you are not broken. You are being built. You are not unloved. You are being protected. You are not empty. You are being prepared. The chosen ones don't walk the common path because they were never called to a common life. And though the journey is narrow, it is holy. Though the road is steep, it is sacred. And though it may be walked in silence, it leads to a purpose that speaks louder than words ever could. Oh, well, give me the conclusion space based on title, The Power of Starting Mornings with God. ChatGPT said, here is a powerful and heartfelt conclusion for the speech titled, The Power of Starting Mornings with God. And express yourself others on both platforms, okay? Just watch that. Let me tell you something. The greatest scholars in the world, the greatest engineer, understood, the greatest counselors on both platforms, okay, is the greatest song on the world. And so, as we stand at the edge of another sunrise, I urge you, don't just wake up to a new day, wake up to divine alignment. Every morning holds a fresh invitation from heaven. Not just to check off another list, not just to dive into the noise, but to begin in stillness with the one who breathed purpose into your lungs and peace into your spirit. When you start your morning with God, you're not just starting your day, you're setting the tone for your life. You are choosing intimacy over anxiety, worship over worry, presence over performance. You are saying, God, before I move, I want to hear your voice. Before I run, I want to walk with you. This is not about being perfect. It's not about long prayers or lofty words. It's about posture. A posture of surrender. A posture of dependence. A heart that whispers in the quiet, here I am, Lord, lead me. Because when your day begins with God, your heart becomes anchored, your thoughts become clearer, and your path becomes illuminated. Not by your plans, but by His presence. The world may offer noise, but God offers clarity. The world may offer speed, but He offers stillness. And every single morning is a choice. Will you rush into chaos, or will you return to the source of peace? The tomorrow, when the sun rises, rise with it. Not in your own strength, but in the strength of the one who already stands in your day. Give Him your first thoughts. Give Him your first breath. Give Him the start. And watch how He carries you through to the finish. Because the power of starting your mornings with God isn't just about having a better day, it's about living a better life. One filled with purpose, covered in grace, and anchored in a love that never fails. Start with God, stay with God, and end each day having walked hand in hand with the one who called you by name. Amen.